In this lesson, we're going to be going over how to use a sprite sheet. Now, a sprite sheet is going to contain all the UI elements that we're going to be creating throughout the rest of this course. So to get started, we're going to be in the L3 start, and in the UI folder, you're going to find an image called UI. So we have our crosshair, and then we also have a UI image. Now, this UI image contains a few other crosshairs as well. We're just going to be referencing one sprite sheet for all of our UI images. Now, the reason why this is important because it does save on performance. You only have to reference one image for all of the images that we're going to be using for our UI images. So we're not going to be using single images like we did with our crosshair. Instead, we're going to be referencing one sprite sheet. So right now, the texture type for this image is set to texture. This is actually going to be a sprite, 2D, and UI. We also need to change the sprite mode from single to multiple, since we have multiple sprites we're going to be using from this sprite sheet. Make sure you hit apply. And once you hit apply, you should see some transparency. All of these are going to be individual sprites. So we're going to be slicing this up, and we're going to be slicing this up using the Sprite Editor. So directly underneath pixels per unit, you're going to find a button called Sprite Editor. Go and left click on that. All right, so this is our Sprite Editor, and here we can actually start slicing up our sprites. Now to slice up a sprite, you just want to left click and drag a box around a sprite. And you can see we have a nice blue bounding box around this sprite. Now once you do that, you want to click on Trim. This will allow us to trim any excess around that box. And now you can see that the bounding box is much, much smaller. So we're going to be doing this for each image in here. So if it's separate, it's going to be its own image. Down here where it says health and armor, all of this is going to be contained within one image. So we have these little bounding boxes with the health and armor text. Everything else is exactly as is. It's going to be one image. So the bars right here are going to be separate. These are going to be separate. These are going to be separate, so on and so forth. Now I am going to be doing a quick time lapse of this, so you don't have to watch me slice each individual image. I'll come back when I'm done. All right, and we're done. So we can see what these slices are. So this box right here is its own individual image. It is a bit hard to see because the bounding box and the sprite bounding box right here is the same color, but this is one image right here. We have multiple crosshairs. Now we're not going to be using all the crosshairs here. These are mostly just for you. If you do want to change your crosshair, feel free to do so. So I'm going to be using this crosshair. We have our gun icons. We have these icons here, which are all going to be used within our Minimap. This bounding box here is for a Minimap. We have a bounding box here for the icons for our weapons. And this is also going to be for our ammo count. We have a health bar and a armor bar down here. And then finally, we have the health and armor along with the bounding boxes for those as one image entirely. So once you're done with that, click on Apply at the very top up here. Go and close up that window. Now, if you take a look at the UI image from the UI folder, you'll find multiple images in here. So these are all sprites. And it starts off with UI_0 all the way down until we get to 15. So in total, we have 16 images here. Now, we're not going to be using all of them quite yet. Some of the crosshairs are going to be left out, but we are going to be adding most of these images to our canvas over here in the hierarchy. Let's switch to the scene view. And let me get a better view here. So I'm going to be creating multiple images. I'll probably be creating about 10 to 12 images in total. So let's go and left click on the UI from the hierarchy, right click on it, UI, and go up to image. So we're going to be doing this quite a few times. So just duplicate it. All right, so I'm going to start off with about 10 or so. 10 to 12 would be good. So we're going to be replacing the crosshair first. I believe that is going to be UI 7 or so. And it is for me. Depending on how you slice this up, it may be a different number. So for the crosshair, I'm just going to be replacing the one that we have in there. So I can actually remove the crosshair that is by itself. So UI 7 is the crosshair from the sprite sheet. There we go. We can remove the original crosshair. There we go. Now let's make sure that we have the same size. So the size down here is 50 by 50. It should be the same size up here. I'm using half the size for that. So 25 by 25 for the crosshair. Everything else should be exactly the same. All right, so I'm going to go and assign my first image, which is going to be UI 0. That's going to be the enemy icon. And I'm just going to go ahead and rename these now. And once again, I'm going to be doing a quick time lapse. I'm just going to be assigning the images to these. And we're going to come back with our images already set up. And we're back. So we have all the UI images in place already. In the top left, we have everything for our Minimap. So I created the Minimap bounds. And this is the big box right here. This is 305 by 305. Make sure that you do adjust the width and height for each of these images. So you'll see the width and height of the images down here, Right now it's kind of cut off, but it says image size 305 by 305. So everything in the Minimap, as far as the icons go, has been included as a child object of the Minimap bounds. So you have the enemy icon, the friendly icon, player icon, and ammo icon. And these are all the child objects of the Minimap bounds. We're not going to be using a Minimap quite yet, so we can actually select the parent object and deselect the checkbox up here. That'll disable that image element. Next, we have the ammo bounds. That's going to be in the bottom right. So here we're going to be including all of our ammo count information. We're going to have our weapon icons, and we're going to have the box right here, which is going to hold the weapon icons. So the ammo bounds is this image right here. It's this big rectangular looking image right here. Open this up. We have the weapon bounds, and we can actually move the weapon icons underneath the weapon bounds as well. So let's do that now. I'm just going to drag these underneath. There we go. So the weapon bounds is this box right here. It's a smaller box, and that's going to contain the weapon icons. So the weapon icons right now are the handgun and the Mac 11. So the handgun is the one that's currently enabled. The Mac 11 is in the exact same spot, but we did disable it. So at the very top, you can see this checkbox has been disabled. So whenever we switch weapons, we're going to be enabling and disabling these icons. So ammo bounds, weapon bounds, and then handgun icon and Mac 11 icon. Next, we have our health. So the health and armor bounds is this image right here. You can see we have the little bounding boxes for the different bars that we have, and then we have the text itself. So if we open this up, we'll have the armor bar and the health bar. So both of these are in position in these bounds as best as possible. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but try to get it as close as possible. All right, and those are child objects of the health and armor bounds. Now we're not done quite yet. We also need to make sure that the anchor points for the parent objects are in the correct position. So right now the anchor points are in the center point. So the health and armor bounds has it in the center point of our canvas. So why is this important? Well, if our canvas changes size, and usually it would change size if the screen size that you're playing on changes size, the canvas is going to resize to match that new screen size. It's going to be using the anchor points to determine where those UI elements are going to be placed. So if it's in the middle, it's using the middle point of that screen or that canvas in general to determine where that image is going to be placed. Now we want this image to always stay in the bottom left corner, so we want to move the anchor point to that corner as well. So with the health and armor bounds parent object selected, let's go into the rect transform, open up the anchor presets. Right now it's in the center. Just left click on the bottom box over here. There we go. Now maybe a little bit hard to see, but the anchor point is now in the bottom left. Now the child objects of this element are going to be using the parent object anchor point as well. So wherever the parent goes, the child objects will follow. Now we need to do the same thing for the ammo bounds. Scroll out here. So the anchor point is in the middle. Now if you click on any of these objects, it'll show you where the anchor point is. So for the ammo bounds, it's in the center again. Let's go back into the rect transform. Anchor presets, move down to the bottom right this time. So we want the anchor points in the bottom right and in the bottom left. Now for the crosshair, we have it directly in the center because that's where we want the crosshair to always be. Now there is one other thing we need to take a look at, and that is on the canvas itself. So if you take a look in the inspector panel, we have a canvas scaler. Now right now it's set to a UI scale mode of constant pixel size. Now why is this important? Well, if we switch to our game view real quick, right now we're in the free aspect. If I were to change this to say 16 by 9, you can see that it gets a little bit smaller. This is typically good for a 1920 by 1080 screen size, but you'll notice our UI elements don't change in size. They're still quite big, and that's because we're using the constant pixel size. So the size of these images won't change. They stay in the corner, but you can see it does get a little bit crowded as far as our UI goes. So no matter what screen size we pick, even if we went down to 5x4, you can see they start to overlap because they're not resizing those images. So we need to change the UI scale mode from constant pixel size to scale with screen size. Now I have adjusted this before. As you can see, my reference resolution is 1920 by 1080. By default, it is going to be 800 by 600. You want to use a reference resolution that you're going to be building for. Now in my case, that's going to be 1920 by 1080. And now you can see our images have resized. So now no matter what screen aspect we're using, those images now move and adjust in size based on the screen size. So now we have our UI images set up. In our next lesson, we're going to be going over how to display our ammo count information within the ammo bounds UI element.